Director, my colleague, the Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Pasha, and my colleague, Deputy Minister of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities, Mapaseka Steve Litsike, scientists, researchers, and clinicians from our various institutions. I want to specifically welcome Professor Ndobek Ntuzi, who is online. He is the President and CEO of our prime research organization, the South African Medical Research Council. He could not be with us today because he's in Cape Town, but he's logged in there. I also want to give a special welcome to the President of South African Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, President Ishmael Borat. He's also with another member of South African Society of Gynecologists, Professor Zozo Nene. They are also logged in on the screen there. The Chief Regulation Officer of the SAPRA, South African Health Product Regulatory Authority, is also on the screen because Dr. Simete, who was with us yesterday in preparations, could not make it. On the screen, we also have Dr. Richard Brown, who is the head of chemicals and radiation at the World Health Organization. He has logged in from Geneva, but I'm sure you are aware that the WHO is represented here today. So I also wish to welcome officials from the regulatory authorities. We have got in our midst Mr. Hadin Nadishan, who is representing, who is the acting commissioner of the National Consumer Commission. I also want to welcome here in front with us Dr. Shenas El Halabi, who is the country representative of the World Health Organization here in South Africa. As I said, her scientist, Dr. Brown, is logged in from Geneva. We also have representatives from various state entities that were part of this work. Members of the media, you are welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, and fellow South Africans, good morning. Today is an important day as we commemorate the International Women's Day with the theme, Give to Gain. It is important and fitting that we have this briefing today on International Women's Day. I wish to start by apologizing for the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Pax Dau. He is an integral part of this event. Unfortunately, yesterday he left overseas. I spoke to him by phone and he's wished us well. He said we are also representing him. But as you also can see, the Minister of a very important stakeholder department in this regard, Minister Cindy Chikunga, is also overseas and is represented in this event by Deputy Minister Litsike. Minister Cindy Chikunga said if she can find a time where she is in the US, she'll also like to log in. I think she hasn't logged in yet, but we have got Deputy Minister Litsike, so we are complete. Thank you very much for attending this press conference, which I believe was long awaited by the country as a whole. I promised Parliament, because this matter was raised very sharply in Parliament, where they believe the state is doing nothing about an impending disaster that's going to befall women. I promised them that before the end of the week, we'll be having a press conference, and I believe we have kept our word. Now, let's start with the background. A study was conducted by the Department of Analytical Chemistry at the University of Free State and was published on the 25th of February 2026. This study was conducted on 16 sanitary pads and 7 pantyliners, which were bought online. In the study, small quantities of endocrine disrupting chemicals, colloquially referred to as EDCs, were present in the tested samples. The study concluded that menstrual products are a significant but overlooked source of exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. This story was picked up by the media and has received wide coverage, especially in social media, resulting in widespread panic amongst women and young girls who use these products on a regular basis. Now, what are these EDCs, or endocrine disrupting chemicals? Endocrine disrupting chemicals are natural or human-made products that have the potential to interfere with the action of hormones, especially reproductive and thyroid hormones, if the quantities exceed the permissible concentration levels. Hormones, on the other hand, are the body's chemical messengers produced by endocrine glands and are released into the bloodstream to regulate vital physiological process. They control metabolism. That means what you eat and what you take out and what you digest. They also control growth of a human being or any organism. They control reproduction. They also control mood and sleep and wake cycles. It's not spontaneous. You don't sleep and wake by a watch. There's an internal physiological process that does so. The watches are just helping us. Endocrine disrupting chemicals are said to be capable of disrupting these very important bodily functions, which I've just mentioned. The permissible concentration levels of endocrine disrupting chemicals in any product are determined by the cosmetic ingredient expert panel. This cosmetic ingredient expert panel is an international panel. They control whether the amounts of these disrupting agents are in concentrations that are harmful. Their decisions are usually used by relevant regulatory bodies, such as the Food and Drug Administration in the US, to set practice guidelines. There are many regulatory bodies in all our countries. That in our country is SAPRA. The reason that I'm quoting the Food and Drug Administration is the biggest of them all over the world. You'll understand why. Because it's in the US. It has got more than 10,000 people who are sitting there every day for purpose of regulations. Yes. Now, where are these ECDs found? Where do we find them? Do we find them only on pads and pantyliners? As earlier said, these are naturally occurring or human-made chemicals. Endocrine disrupting substances can occur naturally, but they can also be made by human beings. Now, the most important takeaway message for today is that endocrine disrupting chemicals are said to be ubiquitous in science. This is a very difficult word, difficult to pronounce. Ubiquitous. It means they are present, appearing, or found everywhere. Everywhere where there are human beings, these chemicals are ever present. They ever appear, and they are found everywhere. I want this message to be a take-home message because it's a very important message. They are ever present in low concentrations, in various foodstuffs, in household products, in personal care and beauty products, cosmetics, toothpaste, shampoo, conditioners, body lotions, lipsticks, which many of you are wearing today, clothing, which all of us are wearing, electronics, which many of you are carrying. They are widely used in agriculture as pesticides. The food we eat, one of the reasons that it has been able to produce is because we killed pets, and some of the chemicals used there are falling within this class of endocrine disrupting chemicals. Now, is the finding of endocrine disrupting chemicals in menstrual products a surprise or a new finding? That's the question. Is this finding a surprise or a new finding? Not at all. The findings of endocrine disrupting chemicals were found in menstrual blood, it's not surprising to us at all. Previous published studies have confirmed that small amounts of these endocrine disruptors are present in menstrual health products. Have scientists always known about endocrine disrupting chemicals? That's the question. And have they also known that they are ever present in human life? Yes. The presence of endocrine disrupting substances have been known for over 100 years. And if I have to be precise, they were identified in the early 20s. So it means it's 106 years since that. A study in China reported that 40% of endocrine disrupting chemicals emanated from foodstuffs, 40% from other personal care products, as I mentioned, cosmetics and all that, and 18% from indoor dust, because these chemicals also are found wildly in the soil. Of the personal care products, which we abbreviate as PCPs, which were analyzed, sanitary pads contributed 6.8% of the total exposure through feminine personal care products.
Recording in progress.
Now, what was the response by the state to the University of Free State study? Because quite a number of people, especially on social media, believe the state just went into hiding. Immediately after the study was released, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, also the Department of Health, convened different meetings of experts to dissect this issue. You will appreciate that these are the departments that were directly affected. But from there, the two departments worked together to convene experts relevant to the study findings. The experts that were convened are divided into two clear groups in South Africa, but I might also add a third group, which is UN agencies. But here in South Africa, there were two groups. The first group are scientists, researchers, clinicians, and other health workers, those who work in the field of health. The second group are regulatory authorities and institutions. I've already mentioned here SAPRA, National Consumer Commission, and many others who regulate everything we consume or we use. The United Nations agencies, viz., the World Health Organization, and the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, with their respective experts, also joined the meetings. I was not given the name of an expert from NFPA who could have joined, but I told you the expert from WHO, Dr. Richard Brown, responsible for chemicals and radiation at the WHO. I'm sure during the course of the meeting we'll know from UNFPA who has joined. Now, the meetings were attended as follows. Under the class of scientists, researchers, and clinicians, we had South African Medical Aids Council, South African Medical Research Council, South African Medical Research Council, I'm used to SANAC, South African Medical Research Council, represented by its president and CEO, Professor Ntobeko Ntusi, who is online, as I said. The National Health Laboratory Services, NHLS, which was represented in the meeting by its CEO, Dr. Boitumelo Simete, who is not around today and sent a representative. We had the National Institute for Occupational Health, NIOH. We had the South African Society of Obstetricians and Gynecology, SASOG, together with the South African Society of Reproductive Medicine and Gynecological Endoscopy. These were represented by Professor Ismail Borat and Professor Zozo Nene. Then, as I said, we have got the regulatory bodies, which I've already mentioned, but amongst them I forgot to mention National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications, or NRCS, and as I said, United Nations agencies in the form of World Health Organization and United Nations for Population Fund. This statement that I'm reading to you today is on behalf of all these bodies and institutions I've mentioned. It's not a speech by the Department of Health. It's a speech that was drafted jointly yesterday by all these bodies sitting together, some online, and I read the speech to them. So if I'm misrepresenting them, they are here, they'll be able to correct me, but I'm reading their speech. The meeting noted the following, which we wish to bring to the attention of the nation. Number one, that 20 publications have been produced over the years about endocrine disrupting chemicals in sanitary pads. We had 20 publications already. That all the 20 studies have not demonstrated any inference of clinical harm to the people using these products. And again, they want us to repeat that endocrine disrupting chemicals are ubiquitous, found all over where human beings are. The exposure, also said we must tell you that the exposure of endocrine disrupting chemicals is actually higher in men than in women due to occupational exposure. I'm emphasizing this because the fear and the panic was about women, not men. But when you check, if you check physiologically in the blood of many people who are exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals are men than women because of occupational exposure, as we saw with that study from China. But also, they said we must inform you that scientists are obliged to follow well-established scientific methods and protocols, and that scientists need to know and understand the avenue of reporting their findings. And also that globally, the industries that manufacture sanitary pads follow a universal approach in their manufacturing, and it's not unique to South Africa. And that potential risks of endocrine disrupting chemicals to disrupt hormones is still theoretical and not yet established in practice. That to establish potential risk needs certain amounts of the chemicals, and the relevant concentrations are determined, as I said earlier, by the Cosmetic Ingredient Expert Panel, which is an international body. That concentrations of EDC in menstrual products is very low. That findings of ECDs in sanitary pads does not automatically translate into harm in the human body, and that no link of clinical harm was established by the study that brought us here, and that in the absence of reliable data and small sample size studied, no harm to the general public can be said to have been proven. That also that there were no clinicians, endocrinologists, or chemical pathologists that were involved in the study. These are special groups of people who, if there was any harm, are the first who could have detected it. The National Health Laboratory Services has not tested any human samples of endocrine disrupting chemicals because no clinician has ever requested such from their clinical examination of any patient. So when we asked the National Health Laboratory Services what is their experience, they said no, they don't have any because nobody ever requested this from any clinical finding. This is important to note because when there was listeriosis, the first people who detected it, remember that disease which was found in Poland, the first people who detected it were doctors when they started getting patients, and they sent samples to the National Health Laboratory Services, whose institution, the NICD, the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, is an expert in this field. And they confirmed when we phoned them, doctors are phoning us in the national department. They are seeing something that they've not seen before. Have you detected it? They said yes. We've already got quite a number of samples which are testing positive. So in this case, they say nothing was ever sent to them from any clinical examination. Also, that SAPRA regards any product that aids a physiological function as a medical product. You are aware that SAPRA used to be called the Medicine Regulatory Authority. The name changed to South African Health Products Regulatory Authority because it regulates all health products. Now they say one of their guiding principles is that any product that aids a physiological function is a medical product, which means pads, sanitary pads, because they are aiding a physiological product that happens in a female body, are medical products which must be regulated by SAPRA. But SAPRA tells us that certain sanitary pads, while falling within this category, that aids physiological function, have been exempted by SAPRA from regulation due to what they regarded as very low risk. They did not pick up any risk, and so they exempted them from ever being regulated like all the other medicines. You are aware SAPRA regulate medicines by registering them, by monitoring side effects, and recalling them if they pick up anything. But in this case, they exempted them because people were asking where was SAPRA. That from 2017, SAPRA participated in an international study of low-risk medical equipment, and no evidence of causality was presented in those studies. That to date, no report of adverse effects due to the use of sanitary pads was presented to SAPRA, and no need for regulation within SAPRA was arrived at. That since the chemicals have been known globally for many years, the World Health Organization has been looking for any evidence of harm over all these years, but up to date, they never found any from these products. But we also know that the University of Free State study itself mentioned, I think in a press release, they mentioned that the study was not designed to establish a direct causal relationship between the detected chemicals and disease in women. Also that the research findings and their publications are not intended to constitute medical advice, so they are not advising anybody, consumer directive, or product usage recommendations. Rather, the study presented peer-reviewed scientific data and identify areas that researchers might need to look into further. That's what we're told the study did. So the research does not recommend that current products be withdrawn from the markets. And the NCC, National Consumer Commission, also reached a similar conclusion that from studies, including metrology, which they consulted, they reached a conclusion that there is nothing withdrawn. Now, the conclusion. World Health Organization is not aware of any cases globally where access to these important health products have been withdrawn because of concerns over health effects arising from endocrine disrupting chemicals. Another conclusion is that endocrine disrupting chemicals cannot be completely avoided or removed. That is a fact of life that must also be taken into consideration. Nobody can remove them and nobody can withdraw them completely. And that none of the tested products warrants withdrawal from the market. We've already said so. And that no evidence at present to support change of usual practice by users to these projects, to this product. Now, another conclusion is that regulators need to continue with their regulatory frameworks, surveillance, and consumer protection, as they've been doing all along. Nothing to change. They must just continue doing what they've been doing every day to make sure that me and you consume safe products. These regulatory authorities, as we said, is the South African Health Product Regulatory Authority, the South African Bureau of Standards, the National Regulator for Compulsory Specification, and the National Consumer Commission. We are saying in conclusion that we know they've been regulating what we consume. They must just continue. Nothing has changed. We are also saying the scientists must continue to research on these endocrine disrupting chemicals, just as they've been doing for the past 106 years. I've already mentioned that it is 106 years that scientists have identified these chemicals and they've been researching them left, right, and center. They must just continue. Nothing changes. I think I've reached the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.